I'm just crazy about Tiffany's. Hello Starlets, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I'm back with another masculine feminine energies film breakdown. Today we are actually doing Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yes. And you're like, I remember the film. How many of you remember that song? I just aged myself. Anyway, I actually asked on Instagram for movie recommendations for these film breakdowns. Breakfast at Tiffany's was by far my most requested film. So I'm really excited to do this breakdown for a lot of reasons. One, it is one of my favorite films. And two, there's so much juicy masculine and feminine stuff going on in here. I have a ton of notes. Unfortunately, my handwriting is so bad I can't read any of my notes. But yeah, I mean, I've seen this film so many times, but I rewatched it from the perspective of masculine and feminine energies, which if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll get to that in a minute. And oh my God, there was so much good stuff in there. This film is so juicy, so I want to get right into it. So masculine and feminine energies are energies that are within all of us. We all have both. We can have wounded or healthy versions of those energies, but everybody has a core energy, like an energy that they feel they're most themselves in. And that may line up with your gender, it may not. And each of the energies has different archetypes that we can embody either healthy or unhealthy versions of. We all have all of the archetypes within us, but sometimes we tap into some more than others, and we're stronger in some than others. If you want more information about those topics, I have other videos that I will link to this one. I also want to state that I am going to be talking about this from a very heterosexual perspective. That's my background and that's my wheelhouse. That's what I'm familiar with, and this film takes a very heterosexual perspective. So that's not to say that some of the lessons we learned from this film can't be translated to other types of relationships, but that's just the wording that I'm going to use for this film. So Breakfast at Tiffany's focuses on Holly Golightly. She's the main character. She's played by Audrey Hepburn. Actually, rumor has it that Truman Capote, who wrote the book that inspired this film, was a big Marilyn Monroe fan, and he actually really fought for Marilyn Monroe to be the star of this movie. Which, as much as I love Audrey Hepburn, and as much as I love this film as it is, I do think that would be kind of cool to have seen how Marilyn would have taken on this role, but we'll never know. Unless someone wants to cast me in the film remake. So because this film is meant to be more of a wholesome mainstream film, there are a lot of things in this film that kind of get alluded to, but just sort of skated over. I find it really ironic that Holly Golightly's character has really set the stage for the fashion look of New York City, like a very typical sort of modern trendy New York City woman, when in fact the little black dresses that she wore in this film were actually indications that she was a lady of the evening, because in this time period women did not typically wear black during the day, so if you saw a woman wearing black during the day, it usually meant she was doing the walk of shame. Yeah, Holly Golightly is it's alluded to a lot in the film, although never specifically stated, that she is a lady of the evening. She is a very feminine character. I believe that Holly is very feminine at her core. She's got a lot of wounding though, and we get hints here and there of some of the reasons why she's wounded, which I'm gonna go into. She is so feminine. I mean, she's such naturally feminine at her core. She flows with the universe. She's trusting in the universe. She's sort of always in motion. She's just like radiating, just flowing with the energy of the universe, which is very feminine energy. I believe she very much embodies the maiden archetype, which you see a lot. I mentioned that in my How to Marry a Millionaire breakdown. The maiden energy tends to be very wide-eyed, innocent, very youthful, very playful, but can sometimes fall into a wounded category of feeling a need to be rescued, maybe a little bit too trusting of people. And Holly tends to be all of these things, with a few exceptions, with some wounding that we'll get to in a second. Also get the sense that she's stuck in this maiden energy and is afraid to move out of that maiden energy. She alludes to a few times in the film to her brother, and you get the impression that her brother really can't take care of himself, that he needs someone to care for him, and she essentially keeps saying that when she gets enough money, then she's going to take on the responsibility of her brother. But then she always says, well, she just never seems to have enough money. It kind of leads you to believe that she is avoiding stepping into that like mother role, to embodying like her mother archetype, because she doesn't want to be the caregiver. So as much as she loves her brother and she wants to be there for her brother, she's got this block obviously with stepping out of her maiden energy and embodying the mother energy. Some people argue that like you have to give up the maiden in order to move into the mother energy. I'm gonna actually get more into the archetypes in another video. I don't really believe that. I'm more of the camp that believes that you can have some of the maiden energy and you can have some of the mother energy, and you can kind of call on them when you want to. But it does seem like either way that Holly is really stuck in that maiden. She doesn't want the responsibility. She still wants to be rescued, and she's not really ready to step into that mother role of caring for another person, which is kind of why she's blocking that with never having enough money in her bank account to actually be able to take on her brother.
It's a mistake you always made, Doc, trying to love a wild thing. You were always lugging home wild things. Once it was a hawk with a broken wing, and another time it was a full-grown wildcat with a broken leg. You mustn't give your heart to a wild thing. The more you do, the stronger they get, until they're strong enough to run into the woods or fly into a tree, and then to a higher tree, and then to the sky.
Before we get to Holly's main love interest, I want to touch on a few of the men in her life that I think kind of indicate some of her wounding. We actually meet 2 men early on in the film. Actually, only one we actually see, and the other one we just hear him. But clearly in her profession, she meets a lot of men who appear to take advantage of her. We meet a man at the very beginning of the film who he's very very needy, very grabby, very, you know, I did for you, now you have to do for me. And then we don't actually meet him, but we hear a man in her apartment later who is drunk, and it seems to be very, very grabby, very hands-on. These men are, as Holly would call it, rats or super rats. And it's that needy, grabby energy of like, I'm gonna control you and I need something from you. That energy in the masculine is kind of like the little prince who can't actually embody his king. Like it's a man who's still living in that, like, that little boy prince, like, I want it now, and you know, I deserve it, and like that kind of the equivalent of, say, a woman in like a bratty princess phase, but this would be in the masculine, and that little prince energy. That energy, that grabby, needy, controlling, I want it now, or, you know, especially when it's like drunk and erratic, and that kind of energy, very, very unsafe for the feminine. Like, that energy will shut feminine energy down so quickly. There's a lot of it out there in the world. So that's, if you want to know why a lot of women are shut down, that's why. But if you notice, Holly's way of protecting herself is a little bit different. She puts up a masculine shield, which we actually talked about a little bit in my How to Marry a Millionaire video. Lauren Bacall's character had a very masculine shield, but in her case, it was very sort of like hardened and bitter and resentful of the world. Like, it was very closed off. Holly's presented itself a little bit differently, and a masculine shield can look a little bit different. A masculine shield is usually when a feminine core being, I mean, it can be very healthy for a feminine being to embody masculine energy, but if they're doing it as a way of protecting themselves, it can tend to come out very wounded, and it can be really exhausting for them. In Holly's case, it's more just shut down and closed off. She still puts on a smile, she's still friendly, because to some extent she still needs these men to make her living, but it's a protective energy. And if you notice that one of her big traits that is not feminine is she suppresses her emotions. Feminine beings, feminine energy is all about emotions. It's flowing with emotions, and she keeps her emotions very controlled, particularly around these types of men, which is an indication that she's shutting down that feminine energy. Here's the thing, feminine energy is very, very appealing to the masculine. The masculine is very, very drawn to it. If it's drawn to it in that kind of like needy, way that makes the feminine feel unsafe, and the feminine is going to shut it down. It's going to be like, nope. It's, you know, and she'll smile, she'll be friendly, but she's shutting down her emotions and she's shutting down her feelings. She's putting up a barrier there to protect herself. As we see later on in the film, eventually that shutting down is going to catch up with her. There's another character I want to touch on briefly. It's kind of an odd character in the film, but I do think it signifies a few things. We meet Holly's ex-husband. Now, it's alluded to that Holly came from a very, very difficult childhood and had a uncomfortably young marriage to an older man, and he kind of comes back into her life to try to win her back. I mean, I can't imagine that she doesn't have some kind of trauma around that. They don't really touch on it too much in the film, but how could you not really? I mean, let's be serious. And if you notice that Doc, who is her ex-husband, when he comes in, Doc is very in touch with his emotions. He's like, he's ready to cry at any minute. Like, he expresses his emotions really freely. And if you notice, when he comes face to face with Holly, she's almost ready to let out her emotions, and then she shuts it down.
Hi, Doc.
She gets very serious, she gets very still, which is one of her protective measures, is she gets very still and she keeps those emotions under control. Which, I mean, again, there could be trauma there. We don't really know too much about it, but just looking at the surface level, when a person who is feminine at their core ends up in a partnership with somebody who spends too much time in their feminine, it's gonna ruin polarity, because masculine and feminine attract each other. So it's gonna ruin the polarity, but it's also going to force the feminine core being to go into their masculine, right? They're gonna have to step into that masculine container. And if a feminine core being spends too much time in their masculine energy, it's going to drain them. And I think that you kind of see that in Holly, just in a limited space, that because Doc is so in his emotions and they're so quick to come to the surface, that she needs to be very still. And you even notice that a little bit later when she talks to Paul, who we're going to get to in a second, and she talks to him like she's in her emotions when she talks to him, because she's had to control them with Doc, and now she lets them out with somebody else. We're going to get to Paul in a second. There's another character that Holly gets in touch with other than Paul, but we're going to get to him a little bit later. Now, Paul Varjak. Paul Varjak shows up in this film as Holly's upstairs neighbor, and he's an interesting character. I have to admit that a lot of people believe that he is a very kind of boring and bland character, I've heard it referred to. And I kind of always, I didn't really think too much about his character until I analyzed it this way, and I realized how much he truly embodies masculine energy. He is so much in his masculine energy. He has a little bit of wounding. We basically find out that he's a writer, he's a struggling writer. He's written a book, but he hasn't really done too much lately. And he's essentially being kept in this apartment and supported by a married woman, who we just meet briefly here and there. But I find it interesting because as masculine as Paul is in this film, the woman that he's having the affair with is very often in her masculine. She tends to have a very coldness to her, an air of I'm in charge. She's paying the bills, so it makes sense. But if you notice, as masculine as he is, he doesn't have that much ambition at the beginning of the film. It's kind of alluded to that he hasn't really written much lately. He's not really that motivated to write, and I think that's a common thing that happens in a lot of masculine beings. There's a lot of men out there who are naturally in their masculine, but they end up in a situation where they have a partner who is willing to take care of them and support them, and then they, I mean, you know, hey, people caring for you and supporting you and doing things for you is kind of a hard thing for any human to turn down, right? But when a masculine being is sort of like taken care of in that sense, like they don't actually have to go out and do anything, it wears on them. It's similar to when like a feminine being always has to be in their masculine, it's gonna drain them, right? If a masculine being, like a masculine core being, is constantly cared for and he doesn't actually have motivation to go out and find like his passion, his purpose, to actually like live his live his purpose in life and actually focus on his mission, his reason for being here, it's gonna drain him. It's gonna be really draining, and he's not gonna fully step into the masculine energy that he really truly can be. But even with that, he's very much in his masculine from the beginning. He's very grounded, he's very rooted, he's very stable. And I think that's the energy that Holly picks up on from him right away, which is why she takes to him quite quickly. Even in their first meeting, he knocks on her door because he needs to use the telephone. He doesn't have a key to his apartment, and you even notice in that scene where they first meet, she is so like, she's flowing, she's just woken up, but she's just sort of flowing around, and you know, just life is just going, and he is just so enamored with her. He's just like so caught up in this, to the point where when he actually does sit down to make a phone call, he's so caught up in what she's doing that he just puts down the phone, and he doesn't even remember what he's doing. I mean, because he's so caught up in her femininity, because feminine energy is so magnetic to masculine energy, and he gets so drawn in by her. It's like, if you notice, she starts in that scene like she's trying to get ready to go someplace, and he just gets so caught up in the excitement of everything and just watching her. She starts, you know, telling him to find shoes, and she's barking orders at him. I mean, not really barking orders, she's just sort of like, you know, like, oh, get me this, get me that.
Black alligator. You know, all the visitors make an effort to look their best. It's only fair. Actually, it's very touching, all the women wearing their prettiest things. I just love them for it. And I love the kids, too. I mean, the kids the wives bring. It should be sad seeing kids there, but it isn't. They all have ribbons in their hair and lots of shine on their shoes. You think there's going to be ice cream?
It's like, he's doing it for her, and he's just met this woman. But it's not coming from a place of, I'm gonna do this for her so she'll give me something, or like a yes dear kind of energy. It's very much like a, yeah, I want to be a part of this. Like, this is what, yeah, I want to do this for her because I want to be a part of whatever this is, or whatever's going on here. Like, because he's so enamored with her, he just naturally wants to do things for her because he just wants to be a part of what's going on. I mean, because she's so magnetic to him.
How do I look?
Very good. I must say I'm amazed.
You were a darling to help. I could never have done it without you.
You also notice too, and this is like a theme that goes throughout the film, that Holly calls him out too on when was the last time you've written, or you know, have you written today, or things like that, and kind of calls him out, which you kind of, it seems like it's alluded to that the woman that Paul is having this affair with is kind of almost like keeping him from moving forward in his career, whether she's actually doing it or just because she's caring for him. Whereas Holly's calling him out on these things. Like, she doesn't know him that well when she starts calling him out on these certain things, which is kind of like calls him, like it's like calling on his king. Like, she's trying to be like, well, hey, you know, what have you done lately? And kind of gets him to embody his true purpose. Like, she's basically like calling on him to step into that next role that he needs to move into. You also notice a few times when he has some successes in his career, she is so excited for him, you know, and I gotta tell you, there's not much that is more attractive to the masculine than a feminine getting really excited and being really supportive of him living his passion and purpose. Like, there just isn't. Like, for a masculine being, that is literally, that's more than he could ever ask for. Holly's view of Paul is quite interesting. You can kind of tell that she has a sense that he is safe early on, but she definitely is hesitant with him, and she definitely tests him a lot throughout the beginning of their meeting. So specifically in the scene I referenced earlier where Holly has basically a drunk man who's getting a little bit inappropriate in her apartment, she sneaks out of her apartment onto the fire escape, and she sneaks into Paul's apartment. So she's basically escaping a man who's drunk in her apartment and sneaks into an apartment of a man she's just met. So she obviously is getting a sense of safety with him. But she does a few interesting things in that scene that indicate that she's sort of keeping up a little bit of a wall to see if he really is safe. She tells him a personal story about her brother, and then she kind of starts calling him Fred, which is her brother's name. She asks if she can, but you know, she kind of does it anyway. And that's kind of an indication that she is putting up a bit of a wall. Like, no, I want to see you as a brother. I don't want to see you as a romantic partner. It's that kind of protection where she feels safe, but she doesn't want this guy to just become another rat or super rat, really. And she also asks if she can crawl in bed with him, and she's very much clear on it's okay because we're friends, that's all. You know, we are friends. Like she's friend zoning him is really what she's doing, but not because she's not interested, not because she's not attracted to him. What Holly is clearly craving in this film, it's very obvious, she's craving safety. She's craving a safe masculine partner that she can let herself go and she can let her guard down with. But when she meets that, she's terrified of it. And I actually have a video that I will link to this one that gives you some of the reasons why so many women will actually sabotage a relationship with the man that they've actually been waiting their whole life to find. But in this case, I think this shows that she's friend zoning him, not because she's not attracted to him, not because she doesn't like him, which I think a lot of men believe. It's because she wants to make sure that he is safe. She's testing his safety. She's testing if he's just another guy who's gonna start getting grabby or needy, or he's not gonna be strong enough. Like, she's testing him to see if he's going to be able to hold her, to support her. So that's why she puts up that sort of friendship barrier. So one of the scenes in this film that I just think is such an amazing example of masculine and feminine dynamics is the scene where Holly gets a letter that upsets her a lot. Holly ends up involved with Jose. Jose is, he has some money and status, which is kind of what Holly thinks she's looking for. The thing about Jose is we don't learn a lot about him. We do get a sense that Paul is a bit jealous of him throughout the film, because he's sort of like this handsome South American important, you know, guy with status. And to be honest, Jose does appear like he's a very stable masculine guy. He seems very grounded. He seems very enamored with Holly, even from the beginning when she doesn't really notice him. He does get caught up a lot in his status and what his family thinks of him, which could indicate a little bit of wounding, but we don't really learn a whole lot about Jose. But on the surface, he seems like a really great guy. He seems like a really great catch and like somebody who Holly could probably trust and have a great life with. Seems on the surface like everything that Holly is looking for. Then there's a scene, and well, I'm probably gonna give away a lot of spoilers in this film, but Holly gets a letter that upsets her very much. And she goes into, this is what, when people refer to a feminine storm, if you hear anybody refer to that, this is a feminine storm. This is all of her emotions flooding out. Everything that she has felt like she had to keep so controlled is now flooding out of her, and she is just smashing things and destroying things, and like this is a feminine emotional storm. Now, I am not telling women out there that what you can just go and like destroy your house and like that's, oh, it's a feminine storm, okay, I can do that. Like, I'm not saying that. It's just that this is what tends to happen when the feminine has to suppress their emotions, because the feminine core beings especially, I mean, everybody does this, but particularly feminine core beings, they need to express emotion and they need to feel safe to express emotion. And when they can't, it's going to build up and then all hell's gonna break loose, right? So what happens in the scene is Jose can't handle it. He goes running to Paul. He goes running to Paul because he needs help. And then Paul comes in, and Paul, he's that safe container, okay? He still lets her express her emotions, but he holds her and makes sure that she is safe, that she doesn't hurt herself, okay? And he basically contains her, and not from a controlling way, from like a safety perspective. Okay, that's basically, that's the masculine, that's masculine energy. Okay, masculine energy is like the cup, and the feminine energy is like the water or the liquid in the cup. You know, it's like the masculine is the container that holds the movable feminine flow. And Paul is able to handle that. Jose is not. And, you know, Jose goes into this worry about what's he gonna do, and that comes up a little bit later on in the film as well, where Jose really just can't handle her. Which doesn't necessarily make him a bad person or a bad guy, and that's kind of alluded to towards the end. It's, well, okay, well, he's maybe not a bad guy, but he can't handle her. He can't handle her feminine emotion, and he isn't strong enough to handle her feminine energy, because feminine energy can be very overwhelming. It really can. And I think that that's one of the reasons why so many women have like a too much complex, because when they do fully express their feminine energy, which if they fully express it all the time and they're safe to do it more of the time, it doesn't end up coming out like that big, like, I'm gonna destroy everything kind of thing. But so many feminine beings have been told that they're too much by people who just couldn't handle that level of feminine energy, right? And Jose is clearly one of those people. But this is where we find out that Paul really is strong enough in his masculinity to handle Holly's emotions, right? He's really created that safety. And you notice there's a few times that where she actually does feel comfortable enough to start releasing her emotions around him. So she's really, throughout the film, learning to feel safer and safer around him. And there's honestly so many scenes in this film that I feel like I could break down because there's so many great examples. But the last one that I really want to break down, because I think it's so symbolic and kind of just came to me when I was getting ready to film this about how symbolic it really was. But I'm going to warn you, it's a spoiler alert. So I'm going to talk about the last scene of the film. If you haven't seen this film and you don't want any spoilers, I'm giving you a warning now. But I definitely do recommend that you watch this film again, even if you've already seen it, like after you watch this video, because I feel you're gonna see it in a whole different way, because like I uncovered so many layers of this film that I didn't even know existed when I started looking at it from this perspective, right? The final scene just hit me as being so symbolic. Now, throughout the film, Holly has a cat. And cats are very, very symbolic of feminine energy. I mean, cats are kind of always moving, and they're just, cat-like energy is very feminine, in not just house cats, but like big cats and stuff. So she's got this cat, and she's never fully committed to this cat. She doesn't want to name the cat. The cat's just kind of there around her. And as I was thinking about this film, I was like, wow, that cat totally represents her feminine energy. Like, it's in this cat, it's just there, but she's not fully committed to it. Like, she wants the cat in her life, but she's not fully committed to it, right? So in the final scene, there's an emotional scene where basically Paul is basically professing his love for her. You know, he's getting a little bit emotional, but he is very strong and he's very rooted and very grounded. But she's terrified, she's backing away. He's literally everything she's ever wanted or needed in a man. But she's terrified of it, right? She's not used to it. She doesn't trust it, which is so common. I mean, it's such a, whew, I mean, I know the feeling, and I'm sure there's a lot of women out there who know the feeling. Like, it is such a, it's such a strong thing when you're like, okay, this is what I've always wanted, but you're terrified of it because you don't trust it, because you've been let down by masculine energy so much in your life, right? So she's in this position where Paul's basically like putting it all out there. He's like, I love you, I want you. And she is just totally shut down. She can't handle it, right? And he stands up to her, like really stands up to her in such a masculine way. It's not in a controlling way. It's not in a grabby kind of way. It's just a very rooted, grounded, you know, I love you, we belong together, and stands up to her, which, as much as most of us feminine beings, like the thought of it, I mean, even for me, I'm like, the thought of it is like terrifying. But in reality, feminine beings really want a masculine being that can stand up to them, that can tell them what's what, that can, take charge and lead the relationship. And that's what he's doing in that moment. And it's terrifying her because it's not what she's used to. So she, in a rainy night, everything is miserable, and she's in a cab, they're in a cab, they're having this argument. She lets the cat out of the cab. She gets rid of the cat. She lets the cat go out into the rainy, scary New York City street. She's done with the cat. She's over it, right? She lets it go. And I think that's really symbolic of her, like, she's gonna give up her feminine energy. She's done. Like, she's now gonna be that bitter, cold, emotionless, like, she's just gonna totally embody that. Well, she's just giving up a part of herself. She's just like, you know, my feminine energy has not done me well in the past. I'm gonna give that part of my life away, and I'm just gonna be strategic, and I'm just gonna be focused on what I want. When Paul stands up to her and then he leaves and goes running after the cat. And I you know, some people are gonna be like, this is too woo-woo, like it's too out there, but I think it's like, he's now chasing her feminine energy because that's what attracted him to her. That's what he loves about her. So he was chasing that feminine energy, and she finally realizes, when she realizes that, again, he's what she wanted, and she goes after the cat. She doesn't chase after him at first. She chases after the cat. And I think that's very symbolic of she needs to now find herself, and she needs to find her feminine energy. Like, she needs to find that feminine energy before she can then turn to him and be with him. So it's almost like she finds the cat and she reconnects with herself, and she's reconnecting with her feminine core, with that feminine energy, and then she can let herself submit to his masculine energy because she finally accepts that she's feminine at her core. She's not fighting it anymore because she's finally found that masculine energy that makes her feel safe. It's that energy she's been waiting for her whole life. She's just been terrified to find and didn't know it when it actually came to her at first. Yeah, I'm getting chills. Yeah, so oh my God, there's so many scenes. I could literally just sit here and break down this whole movie and do like a whole series on this whole movie, but this is probably already really long as it is. I definitely recommend that you go back and watch this movie even if you've already seen it after hearing me talk about this stuff, because like it's an amazing movie, and from a masculine feminine energy perspective, there's just so much. I mean, oh my God, I could just dive into this all day. But yeah, those were just the parts of it that I just felt were the most significant that I wanted to touch on. So many lessons in this film, and again, this is not about telling you that you have to be one way or another, or you have to do things one way or another. I just think that it's really great when you look at some of these films, because they're such over-the-top dramatic examples of some of these energies and these circumstances and situations. It helps to pinpoint and notice what you're doing in your life, or, you know, are you naturally more feminine or masculine? And, you know, are you really embodying the energy that you really want to be in? Are you seeing any wounding? Are there things that you need to work through in order to really fully step into what you want, right? Because it's not really about that you need to be one thing or you need to be another thing. It's not about that. It's just that, are you embodying your true self and the energy that really lights you up and enlivens you, and is going to call in a partner that is what you want, like is your match, is your person. I mean, I had a lot of breakthroughs, honestly, watching this film and breaking this down, and I hope that you did too. I hope that this breakdown was helpful. Again, I could talk about this movie all day, but I won't. If you have any recommendations of like movies or anything, I mean, I am more familiar with old Hollywood, but if you have any newer ones, I'm kind of trying to mix in some, not new necessarily, but like old Hollywood stuff, and then some more modern day classics, I would say. But if any recommendations, let me know in the comment section below. If you have any notes about this film or anything that you want to talk about, any things that you noticed when watching the film or anything, let me know. Leave those in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and this type of video, then please be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you want more of these videos, be sure you subscribe to my channel. All my social media links will be in the description box. I'm mostly on Instagram, so you can follow me there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.